Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Game 1 of 3 of the Indiana Academy StarCraft League Semifinals between Sam Drew's, or Ehnu, spawning as the white Protoss up here in the top right corner, and Ahmed, or FaBrOwN, spawning as the teal Protoss down here in the bottom right kind of ish corner here on the map Tau Cross. Going to reveal the entire map for a second here. I really like Tau Cross because Tau Cross is a 3-player map, and so it kind of opens up the possibility for early on aggression, things like early rushes, and yet kind of also negates things like the 4-pool or all-in strategies like that, because there's a 50% chance of guessing where your opponent's base is the first time. And so it negates that possibility of such an aggressive play, and yet it still opens up very early, nice aggressive things, less turtling, not quite like a 4-player map might encourage, between the players just stockpiling and building up and then going out for one big push. I like these small maps because they have lots of action going on in the early game. And looking at things here, going to run things on 2x speed, just to kind of increase the action between these two amateur players, is we have the scouting probe from Ehnu coming out just a little before FaBrOwN's scouting probe. Scouting out this area, he put up his first gateway, and then pylon forge for FaBrOwN down here, whereas Ehnu went for his pylon and then gateway. So it looks like he's going to be going for a 2-gate, which will allow him greater production than Fahad's 1-gate right now. And yet Fahad is somewhat ahead, producing his Zealot before Ehnu gets to produce any of his. Now he's producing his Zealot just slightly behind, ever so slightly behind. He's at 14 control right now, under, let's see, 17 for FaBrOwN. It looks as if FaBrOwN has slightly more saturation on these minerals than Ehnu does, and I hope to be able to use this game as kind of an opportunity to show the importance of things like economy, the importance of using the terrain to its best advantage, of scouting, and the different kinds of strategies that you can employ in a Protoss versus Protoss, or really a Protoss versus anything game. And it looks like we have, for FaBrOwN, the Cybernetics Core going up down here. It's about 3/4 done now, whereas Cybernetics Core for Ehnu just barely started. He currently has, let's see, 2 Zealots down here, whereas FaBrOwN is setting up his pylon at his choke right now, his small choke out to his natural, which is a very nice choke, very easy to fortify early on in the game, especially if you're expecting early aggression, whereas the outward natural choke is slightly larger than this. I'm going to turn off the real-time map for the moment and look at things as the players see them. It looks as if FaBrOwN is spawning in warping in a few cannons here. They're almost done, and yet Ehnu is bringing in these 2 Zealots to hopefully take down this pylon and negate the effects of these cannons, but the cannons are going to get up in time, and those Zealots are going to force Ehnu's Zealots away, and he will lose one of those Zealots now. Looks as if FaBrOwN does have the 2 cannons at his choke plus 2 Zealots, and he's warping in a Dragoon as we speak, whereas Ehnu has 3 Zealots slightly ahead, plus that 1 Zealot is coming back eventually from that fight, and he's going to be bringing up his Nexus at his natural, which is a bit ahead of Fahad here, or FaBrOwN, but FaBrOwN is at 30 control and is currently warping in another gateway and a Citadel of Ehnu that is almost done. 30 control again, over 22 for Ehnu, so he is slightly ahead in terms of his army count or in terms of his worker count. It looks as if Ehnu would have slightly more army right now, and so it looks like FaBrOwN is definitely ahead in terms of work count. This saturation is much greater at his natural, or at his main, than Ehnu's is at his main. Regardless of whether or not this new Nexus is coming up, his economy is still slightly behind FaBrOwN for the moment. He's barely putting up his choke point here, in the large choke point. It's slightly harder to defend, with just 1 cannon, it seems, as compared to FaBrOwN's down here, with his 2 cannon choke point, 5 Zealots, 6 Zealots, and a Dragoon already out, always producing more. 2 more Zealots on the way, and he's warping in these Templar Archives, so just barely getting done, which opens up some really interesting strategies early on. I'm assuming that he'd be going for a Dark Templar Rush. Not giving it away, I've seen this game already, but you know, gotta keep suspense a little bit. And you have 4 probes, 2 of them kind of idle up here. The natural for Ehnu, and slightly less still saturation at his main. Whereas FaBrOwN is just totally taking out these minerals, trying to get as much as he can early on. I think FaBrOwN with 49 control over, let's see, over 30, definitely ahead here in terms of just pretty much everything. Other than that, Ehnu has 1 more mining base. He still has less workers than FaBrOwN, which is definitely going to be a huge hit, especially if this game continues. FaBrOwN has shown himself overall in this tournament to be quite better early on in the game, and the shorter he can make the game, the better chances he ever has of winning. Looks like he has, let's see, oh goodness gracious, 10 Zealots here, plus 2 Dark Templar. These are close Templar, which they do 40 damage per hit. That's ridiculous. And Ehnu hasn't been scouting this. He cannot tell that FaBrOwN has these Dark Templar down here. He is not scaling long. If he doesn't have any observers up, at least it doesn't look like he's having observers up, he's just barely putting up his robotics facility. So if he were to find out those Dark Templar were there fast enough, he would be able to get an observer out, but it looks like FaBrOwN is bringing out his massive force of Zealots plus his Cloaked Dark Templar, and he's going to be taking them straight into this force of only 7 Zealots, 2 Dragoons, and only 1 real cannon section warped in. He does have a High Templar. Ehnu has a High Templar. Although it looks like FaBrOwN did do the rational thing here, did take out the detector first, so Ehnu cannot see these +1 attack Dark Templar doing 43 damage each. They're just completely coming in and wiping out this base. I suppose if this High Templar had enough energy, he could just randomly lay down the Side Storm if that would be possible. I'm not told. And hopefully take out this Dark Templar. It would be strong enough, but it looks like Ehnu just can pretty much do nothing. He's just barely getting out his observatory, but he doesn't have the forces to be able to combat these Dark Templar, and especially not the Dark Templar with all of the Zealots, all these units that FaBrOwN is continuously producing with his natural already starting to mine. His saturation at his main still just tremendous, taking out all these minerals, whereas Ehnu is still significantly behind in economy. It's 59 control for FaBrOwN over 23 for Ehnu. It looks like FaBrOwN is definitely going to be able to come in here and take some things out. The Observer is out, but we do have a GG from Ehnu. Not much he could do at this point, and FaBrOwN wins the first game of his semifinal match, best of 3 against Ehnu. And have a great day. It's been fun.